Contrary to popular belief, I'm actually a very big fan of the Call of Duty franchise, and I've been with it for a very long time. And although I like to rag on them and give them a hard time, I really do enjoy these games. Well, most of them. No, I mean it. I really love these games. I fucked up the display, but I don't even care. And if you can believe it, the franchise is actually going on 20 years now. The first game released in October of 2003. And although the franchise is known for releasing a game every year, they've actually released multiple games in a year before. And most of those releases in between major games are usually console ports, mobile releases, stuff that people don't really care about or enjoy. And so today, to celebrate the 20th anniversary of this goddamn video game franchise, I decided to count down the top whatever games that gamers have seemed to just forgotten. Now this list is actually very short, and we're going to go ahead and get into it starting right now. I've seen this a lot, I'll come across a video titled like, the most forgotten Call of Duty game, and it's fucking Call of Duty 2. Like, no, it's fucking not. Call of Duty 2 sold 6 million copies. It's the reason Call of Duty is relevant on console in the first place. No, it's not the most forgotten, it's not the least remembered, it's not even like the least fucking popular. No, of course not. Call of Duty 2 fucking rocks, and I will not see it slandered in this way. So I've decided to come up with a list of actually forgotten games in the franchise. This is going to be a short list, and there's no real rules to this list, there's no particular order to this list. It's just a handful of games that no one talks about, seems to really care about, or seems to remember. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the list. First up on this list, we have every single Call of Duty game released for the Nintendo DS. And I know that sounds like cheating, but if we went over each individual game, we'd be here for a very long time. As a matter of fact, longer than I'd ever want to be. There's just an absurd amount of Call of Duty games on the Nintendo DS, and the craziest part is most of them are unique stories made specifically for that version of the game. They're not just straight ports, they are new games. Black Ops Declassified, the Modern Warfare 1 and 2 games, which are completely unique campaigns. But of course, no one ever talks about these games, and whenever they're brought up, they're usually brought up for how, half-baked they are, the fact that they were released on such a bizarre console that isn't really made for that type of game. Overall, just being unpolished, not very fun, which I'm inclined to believe them by the footage alone. I mean, I've never played them, I don't even own a DS, but yeah, these games just don't look very fun. Next up on this list is a game I actually have played, and it is Call of Duty Finest Hour for the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. And after beating it for the first time, I honestly considered it to be one of the hardest games in the series. And it seems like most people online agree that this game is extremely difficult. And despite its average Metacritic score, I actually found it to be quite enjoyable, especially near the end. The game starts off strong in Stalingrad, emphasizing teamwork and tactics to get through battles unscathed. And although there are soldiers by your side during most missions, they're so useless that they might as well not even be there. They're only there for cannon fodder and to have a cool spectacle while you do all the work. Finest Hour was Call of Duty's first foray into the console market, and although it did modestly, it wasn't a major success. And although I'm sure there are many who remember it, there are few who probably remember it fondly. Next up on this list we have World at War Final Front. Now when this game is brought up, it's usually brought up as being the black sheep, shitty adaptation of World at War for outdated consoles, and that is mostly true, but I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this game, and I can't really explain why. The game really does look like shit, and that's mainly a limitation of the hardware itself. The resolution is so low that everything that's on screen is always muddy, the background is always so pixelated that it just adds this unnecessary noise to the scenery, which if you're emulating the game and you up the resolution, it really doesn't look that bad. It really does seem like it's mostly just a limitation of the PS2 hardware itself that led to the bad visuals. The AI suffers from that same issue that Finest Hour had, where they don't really do much, they just get themselves killed or they shoot at nothing. But it's not as egregious because this game really does hold your hand throughout the whole experience. It's super linear and not that difficult, and if you know what you're doing, you can get through it just fine. Most of the missions are just going from point to point, killing enemies and then moving on. Near the end, it does get a little tiring with the same old attack and defend mission structure. And that last mission in the game, the Shuri Castle mission, really does highlight a lot of the limitations this game suffers from. Gameplay-wise, it's in this very transitionary period between old and new for console shooters. It very much is World at War at heart, but it has some of those older design elements within. But I still find the game very enjoyable. If you ever get your hands on it, I'd say give it a shot. You might actually end up liking it. And that's really all I have to say about World at War Final Fronts. I would say it's underrated, but it's really not. It does suffer from a lot of bugs, the terrible AI, this annoying stutter whenever there's a checkpoint, and all around samey missions throughout that does get a little tiring. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about World at War Final Fronts.
Red Beach 3 is now clear. Carry on, Marines.
Next up is a really bizarre one, Call of Duty Heroes, a mobile game. Call of Duty Heroes, which released in 2014, is one of those real-time strategy defense games, which I hate a lot. It's set in this bizarre universe where all the main characters exist at the same time. It really is just a bog standard isometric defense type game, where you set up a defense and then you just kind of watch your guys fight. It looks very boring, and it probably didn't perform very well because it was actually removed from storefronts in 2018. And now all we have to remember it is footage on YouTube. Let's hope this game never sees the light of day again. Last up on this list, we have Call of Duty Roads to Victory. And this may actually be my favorite game on the list. Call of Duty Roads to Victory was released in 2007 for the PSP, and yes, that is the same year as Modern Warfare 1 released. It's hard to believe such different games released in the exact same year. Roads to Victory shows us a handful of battles from the perspective of the American, Canadian, and British forces during World War II. And although it starts off with an operation in Italy, as well as some battles during D-Day, the majority of the game takes place during Operation Market Garden, which is not just a unique setting in Call of Duty, but a unique setting in World War II shooters in general. The only other game that I can think of that depicts Market Garden is Medal of Honor Allied Assault, and that game sucks. Because this game was released on the PSP, it has very dumbed down controls, a lot of the set pieces are scaled down, there's not a lot of enemies on screen, but somehow it's able to keep the action going and create an engrossing experience throughout. A lot of the enemy placement and level design and set pieces use the limitations of the PSP to their advantage. And going into this, I didn't expect it to work at all. I didn't expect to actually have fun and be engrossed like I was. It's insane that they managed to make such a great Call of Duty game on the PSP. And if you have a PSP, I recommend getting a copy of this game and playing it, especially if you're a fan of the older Call of Duty games. It really harkens back to this mix of Call of Duty 2 and 3. I'd even consider it in some cases to be more fun than Big Red One, which I know is a lot of people's favorite in the series. But I would definitely consider Roads to Victory to be a worthy Call of Duty game that is in desperate need of some love and attention from the fans of this series.
Good job, lads. We've secured our bridgehead across the Rhine.
And that's pretty much the list, and I'm sure some of you are going to be upset that I didn't include your favorite obscure game in the series, you know. Oh, what about Call of Duty Siege? First of all, Siege is a fucking, what is that, a digital card game? That barely counts as a video game at that point. Or maybe some of you are like, oh, what about fucking Big Red One? Big Red One's like my favorite. No, nobody knows about that one, which is, it's not true, man. I know a ton of people who Big Red One is like their first game they ever played in the series, so it's not really that obscure. I guess one honorable mention would be that one mobile game that I can't even think of the name. Not Heroes, it's Strike Team, Strike Team. The name of the game is Strike Team. I guess that could have been on the list, but it's too late, I've already recorded all this. And a happy 20-year anniversary to one of the biggest brands in gaming. You think they'd do something cool to celebrate, but no, they're just doing a little discount on Steam. It's not even that big of a discount. Fucking games are overpriced, dude. $60 for a game from 2012. That's 11 years ago, and they're still charging full price for that shit. Jesus Christ. Well, the video's over. Go ahead and get out of here.